I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got like brick sales and a couple of my friends throwing I put a bunch of money aside, like 50 grand. I was like, throw the best fucking party you can.
Let's tear it up.
I want, go-go dancers. I want hookers. I want goats. I want midgets. I want to go out exactly the way that I lived this fucking crazy life. Okay. Hi there, this is Andy Gould. Welcome to the Capri podcast.
Well, that's actually the best way of kicking off this podcast and introducing our first guest, Andy Gould, the man, the myth, the legend. Welcome to Capri, Andy.
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking the time to pop our podcast cherry. I figured you probably have some experience in that department, so I feel like we're in good hands.
Yeah, there has been some of that. I don't know if you could say those things anymore.
Popping cherries?
Yeah, no, it's probably, It's sort of interesting, this whole Me Too movement, which you have to be totally rah-rah for it because it's certainly about time. And a lot of people have definitely overused and misused their powers. But there is such a thing as decades. Mm-hmm. And, when now people are going back so many decades. And, back in the music business in the 70s, 60s and 70s and like early 80s, it was really out of control, and the people that were really out of control were in fact the women. You go backstage and the women were like, we're getting with those guys in the band, so you please move away, Mr. Manager, Mr. Roadie, you move over there because we're going in to see the band. And they had a real agenda, those women. I'd look, you could look back at it now and say, I don't know, it was wrong, but they were, you talk about empowered women. They were empowered.
Well, now a lot of them, some of them are writing books and coming out with their stories, and they're monetizing now. So
well, yeah,
maybe they knew exactly what they were doing, but it's interesting hearing these stories. I'm sure you have a ton, and the interesting thing, you brought up the Me Too movement and with film, and you being involved in both film and music, have you seen is there a big difference between the two businesses? Obviously, you came in and you started in music, and film has been probably passion of yours last decade.
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, there's more. Anywhere, any industry where there's desperation.
Yeah.
People come to Los Angeles, I think, with this sort of dream of making it, and the minute you realize that every other talented, pretty person is coming here to make it too, and you realize what a horse race it is, what a competition, then you can. There's always people that will take advantage of that, and I think the film business is. I mean, you've always heard that casting couch stuff,
Eddie keeps trying to get on
It's a different perspective, right? Because exactly, yeah.
What's that?
Eddie keeps trying to get on one.
Hey, anybody know a good casting couch I can find around town? Danny's trying to get some work. It's completely different though, right? Music, it's kind of almost part of the fantasy, and people are dreaming about the rock star, and maybe they hook up naturally. It's more organic, whereas somebody's trying to get a job in the film industry, right? And then you're taking advantage of them.
But the music video culture, that was probably the closest thing. To an extent, early on.
Listen, I've seen it in the music business. I've seen people abuse their power, and I suppose in some respects, there's always an abuse of power. Whoever's on top is going to be in a better position than the people that are trying to get there.
Yeah, it's just an industry filled with beautiful women, though. It's the difference.
But that's the film business.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I mean, but it's. The music business, I find the music business is a little less. The film business can be kind of sleazy.
Yeah,
can be sleazy. Yeah. Depends where you go. I mean, also the music business. If you talk to some of the women that have done extraordinarily well and have been players in the business, I'm sure people that you may have on the podcast at some point or another. Successful people, Michelle Jubilera at Capitol, and a lot of the big lawyers, Dana and there's a ton of them, and executives. Polly Anthony, God bless her, she's no longer with us, but Michelle Anthony, they'll tell you all the stories of people saying inappropriate things and making cracks about their, making jokes about them bodies and stuff, but they give as good as they get. I'm a little concerned that some of these people now that are suing and making a lot of noise are the ones that didn't make it. And the ones that did make it were the ones that just, when a guy said something bad, they were like, go fuck yourself,
Yeah. Right. Yeah, talent's it's gonna win in the end, right? Talent's always gonna come out.
I think so. I think I could probably get myself in trouble, but I think like the strong women are the ones that survive it and deal with it, and put guys when we say stupid shit in our place.
Yep.
Put
they're the real poster children, I think.
The ones calling them out the moment's happening, or
yeah.
Don't have anything to gain. It's just,
I know.
it's about
I
time.
actually know someone who was a model actress who was asked to go to Harvey Weinstein's room, and she was like, I'm not going to your room at 1:30 in the morning.
What could we possibly talk about?
Me going to some guy's hotel room at 1:30 in the morning.
Any guy's hotel room.
You've kind of, in a way, you've sort of signed a pact with the devil when you do that.
Yeah, you have to
just
know.
I mean, what goes on in someone's hotel room at 1:30.
Not reading lines, that's for sure.
With alcohol, and then you are, and even if you were like vaguely, oh, maybe that's just the way this guy does business. You open the door and he's got his bathrobe on. You're like, check.
See you later.
I'm gonna let you get dressed. I'll come back. Just give me a little code knock. Let me know when you're good.
It's bullshit. There is some bullshit there.
But they're taking advantage, you said, of the desperation, and people are coming here trying everything, want to make a name for themselves.
Yeah.
It's that glitz and glam of LA.
Well, and that's a contract that's a contract you have to make with yourself. If you're prepared to go and do those things, then that's up to you. And it's a drag that people do stuff like that. It's horrible. But
we all have our stories. I mean, obviously, on my first gig, I was treated like shit. Like, I wasn't the respected guy paying in accounts payable as a temp at Interscope Records. I mean, people were disrespectful or tried to take advantage of you. I think it's the pushback. It's challenging yourself. I guess you already said that, and making sure you kind of stay true to who you are, and you'll be successfsul in this business and be strong.
I'm a little now, and again, you have to be careful what you say, but I'm a little now, getting a little turned off by people that are going back 3 decades, because it was a very different business. And it's good that it's got better, and maybe it wasn't good that it was bad, but it was a different time, it was just a different time.
So you bring up that different time. I mean, when did you come to LA first? You were in New York, or was it Andy in the UK? Like, where did you really get started?
I started as, it's ridiculous. Like, next year it'll be 50 years, which is really crazy. I was in the UK, in England, we don't have crazy, or we didn't have crazy racism like America sadly does, but we do have really bad classism, where you're either born, the upstairs or downstairs. And I had a wonderful family, but we were working class people, blue collar. My dad was a carpenter builder. My mum worked the local hospital switchboard, and so I went to my career day, and I had an album with me. I remember I had a record with me, because I always loved music, and I said, I want these jobs. Whatever these jobs are. I didn't even know what they did. I just listed all these jobs on the back of an album.
What record was it? Do you remember?
It was a singer called Adam Faith,
okay.
Who had a bunch of hits in England. Think, what would he be like in America? Like a wannabe Elvis Presley kind of thing.
Okay.
And they were like, you'll never have those jobs. They'll never give a working class kid those jobs. Those jobs are reserved for the sons and daughters of the well-to-do and the people with, influence and power. And I really didn't like that answer.
No.
And I didn't quite know what to do except sort of I lived in London, but I lived on the outskirts of London. I got on a bus and went into the middle of London and kept knocking on doors. And I got a job as a bike messenger for chapel music. And
Did you just go into the office and say, "Hey, I want to work for you guys. Whatever I got to
knock
do."
on the door and say, "Is there any jobs?" You know, most of 80% of people were like, "No," and get out. You know.
Right.
But eventually I did get a job, and I worked for Chapel Music, which is now Warner Chappell, still a very famous company, but it used to be just Chappell's. And I didn't like being on the streets in London doing bike messengering because, being a bike messenger in California, pretty cool, a lot of pretty girls, sunny.
Yeah, nice out, yeah.
Not a bad gig, but in London it's cold, it's raining, people are pretty miserable. But one day I took some piece of sheet music, over to this really famous person, and I said, there's a job in England called a T-boy, and the T-boy in England is T-E-A, not T, but T-E-A boy, and you have to know how to make a cup of tea in England. Right. And a lot of famous people started as T-boys, and the equivalent in America is working in the mailroom at an agency, or perhaps an intern, but in England it was a T-boy, and I asked this very famous record producer, "Do you want someone inside like a T-boy?" And they were like, "Yes, we do." And that person was George Martin, who was the Beatles producer.
Wow.
This was like 1969,
Right,
1970, right? And they were just breaking up, and my good friend Rick Sales, who's Slayer's manager, has always said it wasn't Yoko that broke up the Beatles, it was my awful tea.
So is that where T-Boy Records comes from? Oh, cool.
Yeah, when they said, "Do you want to name your record label? What should you name it?" I was like, "Oh, I gotta go right. I'm gonna complete the circle."
Absolutely.
T-Boy Records, and it was kind of cool to get a Grammy with Megadeth last year. And it was like T-Boy Records, I was like, okay, somehow the circle got complete a little,
Was that your first Grammy? Or
no, I've been nominated a lot of times with different things. We won a couple with Linkin Park.
That's right.
Now, did you have a chance to at least, I know they were breaking up, the Beatles, but did you have a chance to at least experience some of the band before they broke up?
The biggest thing that happened was that I heard them playing on the roof of Apple, that famous Get Back, when they were playing on the roof, and I was sort of in the neighborhood. I was still a bike messenger. That was the closest I saw them. They were really basically broken up by the time I got there. Okay. John had gone off, and I never even saw him. I saw McCartney came by a few times, but they were I never saw it. The stuff that I remember is George, God bless him, who's recently passed away. I remember one time asked me to tidy up his office, which is what you do when you're the low guy on the ladder. And he was like, "Can you put all these tapes in order?" And I remember going, all my loving goes next to, like it was like putting these, like, who knew, 50 years, 60 years,
pre-internet,
years later,
no
these
reference.
were, I was like, and these were some of the master tapes in his office, and I was like, why didn't I just put one under my coat? I mean, these things. I would think these things at some point in time, if not already, are like, what do you call that?
Didn't Michael Jackson buy those?
I think he's the one who ended up having.
He bought the copyrights, but the actual physical.
You had your hands on those.
Yeah. But not many of them, because most of them were at Abbey Road or Air Studios. But there was some in his office, and I remember thinking, wow, this is pretty crazy stuff. I mean, but even back then, even back in 69, 70, I don't think anyone had any idea that in 2018 they would still be they'd still be every year on the cover of Rolling Stone and still have #1 records.
Headlining festivals in the U.S. throughout the world. Paul McCartney still is.
Paul McCartney's still probably one of the top 5.
And John Lennon is the legend has gotten bigger since his death.
And George, it's pretty crazy that I got to even sort of touch it. That they was that 6 degrees of separation. I was 1 degree of separation away from by working with George. And George was wonderful. He was a great boss, and he and his people taught me an awful lot about. And he was ultra polite. Like no matter how busy or how stressed he seemed to be, he would always would you please get me a cup of tea and thank you,
little things,
just like little gentlemanly things that you sadly feel like might be out of.
He was still humble even though it was a big deal. Did you stay with him for a few years?
A couple of years. I wanted to move on, because the thing when you worked at that company that nobody ever left. Why do you want to leave that? And I think maybe if I'd stayed, I'd still be making tea at my age. I don't think people.
Best tea.
Yeah,
best
by
tea.
that time I'd have got it right. But so I moved on, and I wanted to experience a few different things, and then I got headhunted in 1978, 79 to come to New York. I'd had some success in England with a couple of things. And I got headhunted to work for CBS Records before they were sold to Sony. 1979 in New York was.
What was that like?
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Nuts. Studio 54.
How was that? Did you go?
Oh yeah.
What was that like?
It was nuts. The first time. Can I interrupt myself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Studio 50. The first time I was at Studio 54, this is absolutely true. I went there with a buddy of mine who was dealt substances.
Yeah, he was a purveyor of good times.
Purveyor of good times, and I remember walking in and seeing people would just do it. Drugs. No, but it was like no. Go off to the bathroom. It was like in front of God and everyone. It's like I was like, "Hey, Frank, are they people doing cocaine?" He's like, "Yep, that's what they're doing." And then I saw a girl give a guy sort of oral sex in the club, and then I saw a guy give a guy oral sex on the first night.
It all happened on the first night.
I mean, it was bedlam. I mean, and it was right at the very end of it.
Yeah,
God knows what it was like 2 years earlier. I came in, that was like 78, 79.
So was disco happening there?
Oh yeah, big time, yeah. I think the first big hit I remember when I got to America was "You Can Ring My Bell."
Donna Summer,
the big disco hit. So it was really that was really popular.
So what did CBS bring you here for? What was your role?
They wanted me to be do publishing, music publishing, which I kind of always liked, and they were also sort of to be somewhat in the international department, because there was this whole thing breaking around in the late 70s, early 80s, punk rock, and all the punk rock stuff had this stupid accent.
Andy Gould on
They were like,
in
we
England.
should get someone who speaks like him.
Yeah, absolutely. we need an interpreter.
We need an interpreter.
Andy Gould in here.
So when they came over, they'd have someone who could be like, yeah, that's what they said.
Yeah. Andy can translate.
And but that was a real fun time, because the music business was going. Well, actually, the music business was having a real fun time. Then it went really, really bad, and then they invented the CD.
So it was dropping when the.
Oh my God! Yeah, there was.
Because everyone, which we all saw, the record business was affected by the internet, but even in the mid '80s, the record business was struggling at times. Why is that?
Right before the CD came out, there was all sorts of. They called them Black Fridays. Like Steely Dan's got a song about it. When Black Friday comes, where people would be you know, they just let all sorts of people go because people were just not buying records like they used to. And then the CD came out. And like everything, the music business was really dead set again. You know, they'll rewrite history, but they were dead set against it for a while. And, you know, between the CD and MTV, it was like...
Gangbusters.
Gangbusters.
Yeah.
It was like crazy. There was millions and millions of records being sold out of both ends of the factory, both from the front end legally, and they were shipping out all the, you know, cleans out of the back door. People were making millions. It was really nuts.
What was that first initial push like by MTV when they came into the marketplace? Was it just, hey, we're MTV, we're coming on strong? Were they offering to do videos for your bands?
Not really. I mean, they were just, you know, there was a bunch of people that had already, there were a couple of like smaller companies before MTV. I can't remember the names now, but if I think about it long enough, I will. That were having, there'd be like a block of music videos, because people would make music videos mainly so that people could see what they looked like in other territories. You know, you'd ship them out, and you know, sometimes they wouldn't be much more than just good live stuff, but sometimes they'd be interesting, and some people really discovered the art of it early.
Right.
You know, people like David Byrne and, you know, people, Peter Gabriel, you know, people were like, oh, this is a new medium for my artistry.
I grew up on those. That
Well, we
VH1,
all remember
yeah.
the Dire Straits video. I mean, that was a comment on MTV. You know, I want my MTV. Yeah.
I mean, but there were a bunch of stuff way before that were, and then there were also those crazy videos of older bands trying to make videos, and they were pretty, you know, some of them were really, some of them weren't pretty.
My favorite part is going back to the late '80s and looking at all the old music videos. Like I remember watching a Damn Yankees video.
Yeah.
And you see Ted Nugent, and he has these Star Trek shades on. Like it is just so
Solar
like,
shades?
because he's like, it's pop culture, and he's like the rock star.
Yeah.
And he's dressing with a jean jacket cut off, beautiful hair, and he's got these Star Trek glasses on, and when I'll post a picture to the Instagram showing people what I'm talking about.
There's a classic Journey clip where
Yeah.
they're all pretending to play.
Yeah.
Is it Faithfully, where
No.
Steve Perry has a mustache and he's looking in the mirror and he misses his old lady on the road,
No,
and then he shaves the mustache
Faithfully,
off.
But
Yeah.
there's one that's even more pretty. There's one more that. And now we've gone our separate ways.
Separate ways, yeah.
That's,
And they're out dancing like on the dock.
they're dancing on the dock.
Yeah, I remember that vividly.
That was a
Yeah.
little ill-advised, but we still remember it. So maybe they're right and we're wrong.
They knew what they're doing.
It was pretty. I remember going, "Oh my lord, maybe they shouldn't be doing this."
So how long were you in New York?
I was in New York from '79. I stayed with CBS for just a few years, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83. And I sort of realized around then that I didn't want to work for a big company, because no matter how well you did, even if you brought in a couple of good things, if the company didn't do well, you're just as likely to get...
Got to feed the machine.
Yeah, you're gone, you know,
Yeah.
like open the window and jump. So I realized that was not for me. I like the idea perhaps more of working for myself, and I got some friends of mine. I'd gone off to manage Kool and the Gang.
Okay.
And I joined them. Because I'd already seen from people that used to come in my office, particularly Doc McGee, who's still one of the famous managers.
Yeah, he was with Motley Crue, right?
And Kiss,
Yeah,
and
but-
Poison, right?
But Bon Jovi,
Yep.
Motley Crue,
Yeah.
and then Kiss. I mean,
He's got a couple of hits in there.
Yeah.
Just a couple.
And I remember, like, Doc always said, you know, you get Doc, Shep Gordon. These are the guys I looked up to. You know, that I was like, oh, that's it. You know, you want to be your own guy. You know, you don't want to work for the corporations. It's kind of different. It's a little different now. You work for the corporations now, and you get some success. You could make you make more money than managers. That's when I always figured the business had gone really bad, when the executives make way more money than the artists.
100%, yeah.
That never used to be the case.
Really?
But it is certainly the case now, and has been for many years. But I always sort of was like, so I got into the Cool in the Gang business, and that was really good because it really taught me a lot about going on the road and what that was, and and all the, and it was still like the Wild West, because you go to a gig, you basically leave the gig with a briefcase full of money,
Right.
And the merch part of it was even more bizarre. You just sell a bunch of shirts, get the money, and like give it to the guys in the band, because, and there was no, people didn't know anything. It wasn't, the way we knew how many people. I remember, I think before they even formed Q Prime, but when early on, when Cliff and Peter from Q Prime were the early part of their lives, when they worked with a company called Lieber Krebs, or one of them did, and you would see, you'd see them at all the turnstiles counting people in with clickers. So when the promoter said, we had 17,000 people in, and they were like, no. You had 19,000 people, and where's the rest of our money, please?
Yeah, right.
But because it was before. I know it sounds like I'm talking about the dinosaur age, but it wasn't that long ago. But it wasn't computerized yet.
Yeah, technology just starts once it starts rolling.
Once that starts
But
rolling,
we have still done the clickers at a DWP event.
Have you done that?
We had to, because those technology will go down, and when you're dealing with fire codes and fire marshals, they say you have too many people in here. No, we don't. We're still good. Here's our capacity, and here's where we're at right now. So we click them in and out, so we can see really truly. So that's I think that's a good way of keeping technology honest, regardless.
It was
because our turnstiles, because they shut it down. It's the craziest story ever. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but we literally had only 17,000 people in, but the turnstiles that they were walking through, the automatic things that just click automatically, said we had like 27,000 people in, and we were sitting there watching. And I remember having my cell phone next to one, watching the number click, and you could see it go around once, and it would skip 3 numbers.
Oh, wow.
And we were watching. I'm like, there's their video, and we give it to the cops, and they're like, we had to flip it back, go into hands. So, but that caused us an hour. They wouldn't let people in for an hour until we figured out what the issue was.
Wow.
So technology can fuck you too.
Well, no, it can, and it often does. I mean, there's certainly a case to be made that, did technology help the music business? Certainly did a couple of times, but this time round, perhaps not so much. I don't know. You can. It gave an open door to a lot of people, but it's also made it very difficult to monetize your art, which is really.
Oh yeah. That's
really tough. I think when you see people, young bands, young artists, it's like, wow, it's really tough.
Well, and
particularly bands.
Well, and you've guided legendary bands now. We look back and we're talking about the past, and you're still very active in the business.
Yeah.
But, but you look at the last 30 years of Andy and how you've shaped the genre. When was the moment Andy Gould became the rock guy and really started signing bands and chasing that?
When I was managing Cool in the Gang, and I started working with a couple of record producers, and one of them was a guy called Max Norman, who produced all the Ozzy Osbourne records. And we started my long love affair with Sharon Osbourne. She's one of my oldest friends. Oh, Andy! Or sometimes, fuck you, Andy.
She's straight to the point.
She is straight to the point. I love her to death. And we come from, actually very funny that we literally come from within 10 blocks of each other.
Oh, really?
She's from South London also. She was born in South London.
So she's working class and the same thing. So she's self-made. And
well, her father was a real famous music manager. He managed Black Sabbath.
Obviously,
that's how she met Ozzy.
That's right.
But she was, that like any good entrepreneurial type family, you can ask her about it and read it in the book. one week they'd be dining in the 5-star restaurant, and then if things were bad, they'd be like, like moving in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
It was a different world, man.
Yeah.
It was a different world. It wasn't like it is now. It was a different world. You'd like to do what you had to do to, keep the family.
Eat what you kill, right?
That'd be tough with a family on the road like that, especially entertainment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's got a great story, man. I've got a lot of time. I have a lot of time for Sharon. I forget where I was. Where was
So
I?
we were talking about Cool in the Gang.
Get old
Cool in the
people?
Gang. Yeah, Cool in the Gang. You were Cool in the Gang. You met with Max
I was
Norman.
doing Max Norman, and Max produced the first 3-4 Aussie records, and I started getting more, and then I started managing him and a guy called Terry Brown who did all the Rush records. And so I started sort of being more exposed to heavy metal and hard rock, and I've always liked it as a person. I like it, and I particularly like it live. I don't listen to an awful lot of it, truthfully, but I love it live. Live hard rock and heavy metal is just the most exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Because there's two shows. It's the band and the crowd. Especially back, I'll jump around a bit, but, you go see, like a zombie Pantera, Pantera Slayer show. There's literally two things to look at.
Oh yeah.
So I kind of got more and more involved in heavy metal, and I then joined a company called Concrete, which is a really very successful marketing company and management company. And my partner was this guy called Walter O'Brien, who's since left the music business. Just wanted to retire, but he's still a really good guy. And I remember someone said we've got to check out this band down in Texas called Pantera.
This band in Texas called Pantera.
Yeah,
I love this story.
Yeah.
But what's really crazy is like most people had passed on it.
Really?
Most
So what was the
people-
vibe of Pantera when people are passing? Why were they too dangerous? Would people not wrapping their head around it?
There wasn't. I think like the record labels always are. The record labels always will follow a trend. Just like they are now. They're just following trends, and until they burn the trend out.
Someone has to trailblaze.
And then there's always the trailblazer, and while we were all busy, the record business was all busy looking for the next glam rock band. There was, a bunch of guys wearing flannel shirts in Seattle, which changed the music business, and I don't think anyone saw coming, the industry.
Right.
The fans did. The fans. I remember I had this wonderful assistant, Amy, back in New York, and she was like, "You got to come see this band." And she kept insisting that I see this band called Nirvana. This was on the album before.
Nevermind.
The Nevermind, was it?
Bleach.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I remember seeing them, and the place was going berserk.
Because it was punk rock. I mean, there was crowd surfing,
It was
stage
crowd-
diving.
Yeah. There was at one point there was more people on stage, I think, than in
That's
the
the cool
audience.
thing. If you look at old Nirvana videos on YouTube before they did the Nevermind record, it's like a hardcore show. It's like
They
people
were
are
hardcore,
jumping.
Oh yeah,
off.
he's jumping around.
There's
He's got people around.
crowd jumping from the stage into the crowd. It's punk rock.
So I think what we did, and Walter was really the point person on Pantera, but I was there for the whole thing. We saw it, and we made the Cowboys from Hell record,
Oh, nice.
and a bunch of they're such good memories. Those guys, they really were the crazy rock and roll band lifestyle. There was drinking and partying, and it was great fun.
Legend of the Black Tooth, right?
Black Tooth.
Black
I
Tooth
mean, I
drink.
can't tell you how many of those damn things I drank.
What is
is the legend of the Black Tooth?
Well, where it came from, I'll let you explain where it came from, and then we'll tell
No,
you.
you do it, because I'm not even sure.
It's Dime's like signature drink
But yeah, I mean, that was.
from the band, and then
Dime
you would always
Alcohol.
drink it. Yeah, and it was what.
You drink it before you go on. You drank a bunch of them before they went on stage.
But it
You
was
drank
Crown.
loads of them.
It was Crown
It's
Royal?
Crown Royal. It's a shot glass of Crown Royal with a little Diet Coke or Coca-Cola floated on the top.
All right.
And then that was just the thing. I mean, you drink it. We had someone. I think I remember our holiday party, and Dave
Yeah.
Grohl was there, and Rita was there, and we were doing
Yeah, you just drink
Black
loads,
Tooth with
and
Rita. And
It wasn't so much that it was a drink that they invented, and because that was great, but it was the amount that they would do. That's the thing that nobody kind of really has a handle on is the volume of black tooth shots that were done in
Bottles and bottles of Crown Royal
in any
Park.
given night, and then they get up the next day and then go do it again.
Just hard charging.
And if you see, that's the difference, I think. If you see them, you see any film of them, there's no such thing as a bad. I never saw a bad Pantera gig.
They could work hard, play hard, yeah, and go out and just perform.
They just busted
That's huge.
every night. They came out and they, But obviously, then when the other drugs got involved, that really took down Phil.
Yeah.
And I was, I remember being in the auditorium when he OD'd. And we'd had this wonderful tour with Pantera and White Zombie, and managed both of them. And we were all about to go to a big after party in Texas, in Dallas. And they were like, Phil OD'd, and he was basically dying. And it was like one of the most, talk about like what should have been one of the great nights of my life and Walter O'Brien's life, the management went into like nightmare time,
A second, yeah.
But they were able to save him though, right?
Yeah.
He's still alive. Phil's still
Yeah,
alive.
that's what I thought. Okay.
And it's great. I saw him recently, and he's in really good shape. And he's a really good guy. He's a real maligned guy, Phil. He does say some stupid shit, but he's a good,
We've all said dumb things.
He has all that. Funny, he has all that weird stuff about white power and everything. And there was a bit of that at the Pantera gigs, but they were so not those guys. And Phil, I remember one time we had this little baby band called Lucy Brown, a band from DC, wonderful band with a African American black lead singer. And I remember one time they were playing, and there were a bunch of people doing sort of Nazi salutes at the black guy in the band when he was singing, and Phil came out on stage and said, "You can't be here at my gig. This is my band. You can't do that. You got to get out."
Yeah,
I mean,
show some respect.
He wasn't that nice.
Well, we've also, if he was that way, we wouldn't have seen him on performing at Rock on the Range with Living Color. He wouldn't associate himself with those types of acts.
No,
if he truly felt that way.
I don't want to make it just about that.
No,
but
yeah.
They were never that band, But you see that the real heavy metal shows. Some of those guys think it's about something it's clearly not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a shame that element is out there. But
Well, it's one bad apple will spoil the whole for everything.
Basically. So when Pantera, it was amazing because that Cowboys from Hell with vulgar display of power, which I still think is one of my favorite records that I had anything to do with at all. It was still one of my favorite.
Were you at the famous Pantera show that everyone said the ceiling was sweating? It was so hot in the room, and you'd feel it dripping on you.
The first time we saw them.
Yeah, that's the legend of them.
What was it called? The Basement in Dallas. It was an old rock club in Dallas.
Summertime, was it humid?
It was no, I don't think it was. I think it was a 500 capacity club. There were 1,000 people in the room.
Just
and it was
getting
just
it going.
Sweat. The room was sweating.
Yeah, it's like the legend of them
like
is
a
that
steam room.
It's sweat on you, and it was like one of the most incredible shows in heavy
I
metal
was
history.
at that show.
Yeah.
That was for sure at one of those shows anyway. And you just knew. And sometimes when you see these bands, and I've always had that sort of. I think anyone in our business has that thing of. What would it have been like to walk in and see The Who? You imagine being a manager and you would tell you, "Hey, come down and see this band tonight. They're playing, they're called The Who." And you walk in, you go, "Holy shit, what am I seeing?" Or the Stones, or someone, Jimi Hendrix. You can think of someone was lucky enough to be the first people to see them.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's like that famous Rage Against the Machine video.
Yeah.
That from when they played as student. It was a student performance at USC, and there's 0 people in front of them, and they're playing Killing in the Name. They're playing all these legendary songs now, and you slowly saw people start peppering themselves in. At the end, it's just a big party. But it's one of the coolest videos if you can find that on YouTube. That's another great.
Yeah, I mean, and I think my Who moment really was, I've had a few of them. Lucky, thank
Well, you had
the Lord.
Pantera. What are
Pantera, and then we got a call from Rob Zombie from White Zombie, and we I remember going to see them in, I think it was L'Amour's, very famous heavy metal club in New York.
So at that time, it was harder to get discovered because obviously you didn't have the internet and you didn't have YouTube and you can break it yourself. So Rob, was he already selling tickets? Was there a vibe with him already?
You know, funnily enough, it felt the other way. It felt very like counterintuitive to what you just said.
Okay.
It felt like it was easy. Maybe I was younger and had more energy, but people would tip me off the bands all the time. You know, and there was a real scene of the rock scene in New York. There was a rock scene in Brooklyn. And so, you know, having had Pantera being, as a calling card and being friends with a lot of bands because of Max Norman as a producer, I'd get invited to a ton of stuff. And I remember, going to see Zombie with 30 people in the room. But I just knew. I remember whoever I was with, probably my old partner, this guy's a major star. He's just got something going on.
So you saw White Zombie, but really connected to Rob, obviously.
No, I mean the whole band was great. The whole band was really, really good. But Rob had like a control of it, and he'd already, even when they were piss poor, all living in one room, down in the worst part of New York, and they all lived in one room, and they shared that room with, rats and cockroaches. And I mean rats and cockroaches. If you get to interview Rob about those early days, it was pretty out there. Not for the squeamish. I'm not sure if I don't mean to be rude, people, but I'm not sure if the millennials are going to want to would do what they did.
Well, was he always into the film stuff at that time, did this lifestyle inspire him?
I mean, what I loved about it is that even though they were piss poor, he still had he'd gone to a secondhand a thrift shop, and found a couple of flashing police lights which he put on the amps, and Christmas lights around the drum kit. Just innovative stuff that you didn't see the other bands
no one was doing that.
And, and then as soon as we got a little bit of money, he started incorporating more and more of his vision to it. And I think, he always... I remember when I sat with him, I said, what do you want to do? And he literally mapped out his life. It's still one of my favorite memories of Rob. And I worked with him for a long time. I don't work with him now, and it's sad, but, things come to an end for whatever reasons. But I remember him sitting with me and saying, I want to get White Zombie super successful. Then I want to be successful on my own. And then I want to make sure that I direct all my own videos so that I can parlay myself into making movies.
Wow, he had it mapped
and then
out.
maybe at some point have something, have my own horror themed, amusement park,
That's the only thing he hasn't done yet, right?
I mean, we got close. we did do a couple of. We did a.
I love that because it's very. We were just talking about Conor McGregor, the fighter.
Yeah.
If you look at all his old interviews, and he's sitting on these press conferences, people are calling him arrogant, and he's literally telling you the future of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's awesome that Rob is already new. Successful people know
and
that stuff.
I'll tell you, because people ask me a lot, particularly about Rob. What his work ethic is. Because he never drank or he didn't do drugs, and he was basically always for a long time he's been one of those guys, and he would call me on the road and he would be like, I've just gone round to, this is when I remember it very, very clearly, the White Zombie record was selling really well. Beavis and Butthead had just endorsed it, and it was really taking off. But Rob would call me and he'd like, hey, I'm in Minneapolis and I just went to 5 record stores and there's no records in the stores. And,
he was on it.
Why am I on the road busting my ass if we're not? And so I'd call Geffen and put him through and say, hey, I want the head of sales. And I'd say, hey, hang on a minute, I'm going to put Rob on. And Rob, tell him what you just told me. And it would drive him crazy. It would drive them fucking nuts, and I'd call them out. I got escorted out of Geffen by calling out the head of sales. I suggested in front of the marketing meeting that he couldn't sell tampons in a girls' school. And they didn't think that was as funny as you guys did. They asked me to leave the room. And, but I've always said, and I remember this, like, I always said to people, to record labels, you make more money off these damn things than we do. We're using records to help get our live show and our t-shirts selling more, but you make money on the records. So if you're not keeping records in stock, I'm losing like $1 a record. You're losing $4 or $5 a record.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you be 4 or 5 times more pissed off than me? Like, if I can show you that we lost 100,000 records, that's $100,000 for me. That's a lot of money for you, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
And then it never went there. It's probably why I never got asked to work at a record label.
Yeah.
But that's you wish, being on the record side myself and everywhere, you wish artists would be that proactive with their careers.
Oh man, I think and again, I'm not, nothing rude at all, but I think if Rob was sitting right here, if you asked him, what do you think you're the greatest rock and roll singer of all time? He'd be like, absolutely not. But I can't tell you how many people, and I could go through the bands. Because I don't want to do that. But there's so many bands that I've met, managed, my friends have managed, that I'm like, this is going to be the next big band, and they're not, because they don't have that one thing. Rob Zombie has it in spades, and there's a bunch of other acts, we can go through them, that have it. KI, Killer Instinct. Mm-hmm. Rob has, those guys that want it real bad, they're not taking no for an answer. No is not an option.
And I was actually talking to someone that owns a record label. We'll keep his name nameless, obviously, and he has a couple singers that could be incredible stars, and the singers won't invest in themselves.
That's right.
And that's what I was telling him. I was like, what can you do? And he's like, you can't do anything.
Can't do anything.
You just have to let them be themselves, because there's only one answer, and that's theirs. And if they can't buy in, it's frustrating it may be. And I'm just sitting there from a live entertainment perspective, being like, get your shit together, dude. Like, you're leaving.
I've had them. Yeah. I've managed them, man.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating. I can think of a couple that I'm like, this was the next big thing, and they didn't do it because they couldn't get out of their own way. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't drugs or anything like that. It was their own self-doubt, or listening to the last person that talked to them, or having a girl or guy, poison their mind as to stuff. But in the great line from Caddyshack, the world needs dishwashers too.
Totally.
Not everyone can be famous.
Yeah, it's true.
It's true. And
you gotta have the killer instinct. You gotta be obsessed. They say
drug.
Tom Cruise is like that. He's up at 4:30 every morning, and he's just obsessed.
Yeah.
You don't learn how to fly helicopters in 4 months and then twist and turn them. Just hyping the next Mission Impossible.
No,
But then you got to be obsessed to be great. That's the difference.
And it's like, I was saying this to someone the other day, and it's a couple of years ago now, but why on earth would Paul McCartney want to do a duet with Kanye West? Why would he want to do that? I tell you why. He still wants it. He still wants the #1 record. There's no real reason on God's green earth why,
Paul doesn't need anything.
Doesn't need anything.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to do a duet with anyone.
Yeah. Metallica's the same way.
Yeah.
They just, I forgot the record that everyone hated.
The Lou Reed thing,
yeah, but they probably enjoyed that. It was probably different for them.
Well, but McCartney knew that if he did something with Kanye, he'd have a #1 record again, and
he got one.
He had another #1 record again. U2, I remember having a conversation with Michael Rapino. He'd just come back from a meeting with U2, and he said that the #1 thing they want is how can we still be relevant? It's U2. You're playing multiple nights at the Rose Bowl.
They sold out the Toronto Eden Center 2 nights in a row. It's 80,000 people both nights. I couldn't believe it.
But as much as your first reaction is like, Jesus, these guys are crazy, the next I remember thinking that at the time, then walking away from that meeting and saying, my God, you know what? It's amazing that they still have that hunger. And I wish some of the younger bands had that hunger.
Yeah.
You know, and even like dumb things like I was talking to someone just yesterday about a band that I really like, and they showed me the artwork, and I'm like, there's no picture of the band. Like, you know, if you remember most of the bands that we grew up with, most of the bands, you know, most of the bands broke before the internet.
Yep.
So all you really ever saw was an album cover or maybe a couple of small pieces at Rolling Stone or Hit Parader. But somehow we knew every member of every band. Now there's bands that have got like 10, 20 big singles and a couple of big hit albums. You wouldn't know them if they came in here now.
It's my favorite thing when I'm working out and a good iTunes song comes on. It's got the album cover on it. Just a bunch of guys in tight jeans throwing out my cheesemo, letting people know.
You just knew who they were.
The Manowar record.
Yeah. But I mean, I've had that said to me so many times. It's like, how comes Rob is so successful? Like everyone knows who he is. He's on the cover of every record.
Yeah.
Well, but he works. He does interviews.
And he works, but if you keep your face away from, you know, I think, you know, rock is, you know, there's all this stuff right now that rock is dead, and to some degree it's really having a tough time right now. But I think rock stars are dead, not rock.
That's what I always talk to Clay about.
I don't think rock is dead. I think, you know, music's an aspirational lifestyle. Mm-hmm. I think if you're a kid, I call it the James Bond syndrome. And James Bond, the girls want to be with him, and guys want to be him.
You don't have that anymore.
That's what rock and roll is. Girls want to be, you know, that's what it should be.
Nobody's dangerous.
Nobody's dangerous.
They're all vegan. They don't drink. They go to yoga.
Which is okay.
Which is cool.
But they're safe in their art. They're safe in their content. They're just... I called it chasing radio, when a band just writing songs for radio because they think it's the only way they're going to break.
And the people that are dangerous is rap and urban
right,
music.
Yeah.
That's what's dangerous. If you're a guy sitting in the 7-Eleven in Dayton, Ohio, and you're looking for, you know, what do you want? You want to listen to a band whine about their family life?
Yeah.
Like, I've got my own problems, buddy. I'm going to look at this hip-hop video with someone pouring Cristal over a gold booty. Because that's what rock and roll was.
Yep.
Doing the
and if that's like kind of misogynistic, I don't mean it to be. I'm just using it as a
it's just real
comparison.
Yeah. I feel like the hip hop industry though is starting to soften too though now.
I do too.
You know, the same guys coming up the same way. They're being kind of made.
But any
good
danger
singers,
out there is not in rock and roll right now.
Yeah.
You know, now the EDM thing, and then some of that is kind of, you know, that's, you know, I remember being at Coachella a couple of years ago and walking around when the Queens of the Stone Age were playing, not this last one, like 3 years ago, and walking around and seeing like people were really into Queens of the Stone Age, but if you walked to where the DJ tent was,
they were into something else.
It was going
Everybody's
off
looking
like,
for that.
It was going off like July 4th.
Yes, it was.
Everybody's looking for that one chick, Molly. I don't know if they could.
Yeah.
Some of there somewhere.
But Andy, you brought up the danger's been lost. I mean, you know, I was never a part of that danger rock and roll, you know, lifestyle. You have anything? You don't have to name any bands or anything personal, but tell us something that we ain't seeing that people what was going on. You brought up the Studio 54, which a movie has been made, you know, so I at least can connect to that a little bit. But what are some things that went on that people have no clue of how crazy it was?
Well, I think everyone has an idea of what it was, but I mean, look, here's the deal: when they make these movies and these TV shows, like there was an HBO show called Vinyl, which was just awful. It was awful because you don't need to parody it. It was already like a parody of itself. It was crazy. You'd go backstage and you'd see stuff backstage that was like, I've landed in, you know, Roman times here, you know. But nobody was doing anything they didn't want to do. That's sort of, I think, kind of important. And look, it's a different time. It's a different time and a different place. And things have to move on and things have to change. But I think that there isn't. I don't think there's a band right now that's like taking me on a journey somewhere. You know, because some of those guys, you know, and it got really stupid. It started great, you know, and it was good that people had big images and the shows were larger than life. And then it all became, people would spend more time doing their makeup than practicing their instruments. So, you know, the hair band thing was great, but it got dumb quick. And it needed someone to come in and make. But you know what's really weird about the Seattle thing. I'm gonna get myself in trouble again. all those bands from the '80s that were totally, you know, like out there. You know, like, you know, you go backstage and there'd be rails and rails of cocaine backstage, which I saw many times. I mean, so many times. And people were just getting high all the time, and you know, there'd be multiple women and like chicks running around and like, you know, a ton of drugs. Most of those guys lived. When the Seattle scene happened, when it became a little more introspective, most of those guys have died. Chris Cornell, Alice in Chains, Stone Temple Pilots. I mean, not from Seattle, but very influenced by that.
I mean, the Mother Love Bone.
I mean,
and a whole bunch of them from Seattle. A whole bunch of them, with the exception of Eddie and Pearl Jam. And Eddie's really a surfer.
Eddie's really he's the anomaly of the group.
He's really a surfer.
Yeah. He likes to smoke weed and
he's
chill
not
out.
that guy. But it's amazing on how many casualties have come out of the Seattle scene, and how few casualties.
Well, you
read the most dangerous rock and roll '80s scene, the most drugs.
Go backstage and go, you sort of open the door and go, holy shit! Just shut the door and go, because you know.
Well, you read that Motley Crue The Dirt book,
Yeah.
which they're making a movie now, which I'm really interested to see how that turns out. But that could give you a good sense.
Yeah, it was,
of how,
and the fact that all of those guys are still with us.
Every single one.
Jamming.
You know, all the guys from Poison are still with us, and all the guys from Bon Jovi are still with us, and Aerosmith are still with us.
And I heard Def Leppard was the craziest of the bunch.
Def Leppard were crazy. Well, one of those guys passed away.
Oh, okay.
The guitar player, I think. But yeah, he did.
But I heard they were like the dangerous band of all the bands out there. We hear the stories of Motley and Poison, and
yeah, there was all sorts of stuff going on. I didn't work with those guys, but certainly they're
a legend.
It was pretty legendary.
Yeah.
I picked up The Dirt in 2005. I was in the training camp for NFL, and I'm like, I need something to read. Pulled out The Dirt, read that thing in 5 days.
Yeah.
It's like 500 pages. Read it in 5 days. Instantly became a fan of 80s rock. Didn't listen to much Motley Crue before then. Knew a couple of the songs, like Kickstart My Heart, they'd play in stadiums. And then I read that book, and I was sold. I mean, I bought in. I drank the Kool-Aid. Loved it. I mean, it was so entertaining.
Yeah.
I read all those guys' books.
Well, it makes you look at, when you go to the Rainbow, you don't look at the Rainbow the same. That's for sure. Every time I sit up.
It was, from sort of Zeppelin through to Nirvana, it was pretty crazy back there, backstage. It was nuts, and everyone was having more than a good time. I mean, they're like Rolling Stone did a whole, thing. What do you call it? Rolling Stone did an issue basically devoted to groupies and all the famous groupies that were out there. I mean, from there were all these women that would be, and not only were they groupies, they were public about it.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was
they were taking rocks to their scalps, putting notches in their own belt.
Yeah, it was a different time. And again, for anyone who's going to write letters and complain, it was a different decade. It was a different time. I'm not saying it should be like that now, but I do say I do miss a bit of the danger of rock and roll. And I think you said something very, I thought, smart a few minutes ago. You kind of said it as an aside. I think too many people are writing too many songs just for radio. Radio never was that was never the catalyst. It was always like radio caught up with the bands.
Yeah, you went to radio after the band
You were
developed.
already kind of successful.
You're already selling 1,000 tickets.
Yeah.
Radio took you to the next level,
Yeah.
and then MTV would take you to pop culture
Heck,
level.
Terror never worked. You didn't care about radio
I
until
think-
later on. You know, then it was like, oh, let's have radio too.
Radio needed you. You didn't need radio.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the
Yeah.
problem too. Is it's not connected.
Well,
anymore.
you know, it's the art and commerce
Yeah.
stuff. It's always the same. You know, the level, the razor blade line between art and commerce. And I remember with Zombie, we had all these pressures to do radio shows. You know, where that we'd be on tour making money, and like we'd get like K-Rock would say, "How you got to come and play the Weenie Roast," and then we'd come in. It cost us a ton of money to do it, and then they dropped the record 4 weeks later, and I was like, hey, "I'm not doing that anymore."
Right.
And like the head of Geffen was like, "Well, you got to." The head of promotion. I'm like, "No, I'm not doing it. They're either going to promise me they're going to play the record, or I'm not going to do that." And we didn't do it, and it actually nothing really much happened. You know.
You mentioned Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And Zeppelin's the most important rock band in my life. You've seen Zeppelin live, obviously.
You know what? I saw the reunion live.
Oh.
I never got to see it
Really?
live. It was just one of those bands. I could lie and say I did, but better to tell the truth.
I was gonna say who's better live. That's what I was gonna ask. But since you didn't see them both in the same time period, probably not a fair question to ask.
I did see Black Sabbath live back in those days, and they were great. But again, you know, there's enough film. Led Zeppelin had something going on. There was such. Robert was such a, and I in a way I'm sort of glad he doesn't do more reunions, because you don't want to. I understand. I think I understand it very clearly why he doesn't do it, because you can still play the guitar the same way you played it when you were 22. You can't sing like that anymore.
I know, he had some
and you
pipes.
can't look like that anymore. You know, I mean, you can.
Well, I hope I look like him when I'm his age.
Yeah.
I heard him. I was living in Idaho. I was going to school. This is like 2002, and I heard him on a local radio station. He played at a local venue, and I was like, "Oh, that guy sounds a lot like Robert Plant." And I was like, "That is Robert Plant," but it just. I mean, he must have been on tour though, because I heard him after, and he sounded great.
Probably, right?
But he was maybe, yeah, and he just sounded like his voice was gone, and but he could have been touring though too.
I mean, myself, Rob McDermott, and Rick Sales, and a bunch of other friends. We flew to London to see the 2007 reunion, and it was like incredible. It was really, really great, and it was just a wonderful trip and time. And we know people that are in the camps, and we were backstage and everything. It was really a wonderful thing. But I know that, you know, if he did it multiple nights, it
wouldn't have held up.
It wouldn't hold up. You know, I keep hearing he's going to do one more here. You know, next year at the Coachella site. You know what they called
Desert trip, yeah.
A desert trip. You know that I think if he could get one out, but I agree with you. You can't. You know, to fuck up the legacy would be. To go see him not be good would be a real drag.
He's to me one of the most important people in music. I don't think I'm here without Robert Plant or Led Zeppelin.
Oh, they're awesome. Plus their old videos. Those guys had so much
But
swag
I'm
on
also
stage.
not here without Andy Gould.
Because
because you've been a part of me loving music. So
one of my favorite. You talk about my favorite stories. One of my favorite stories was our friend Phil Carson, who manages Foreigner, was at Atlantic. He signed AC/DC at Atlantic way back when. And I used to do some work for him in London. And he and I have always been good friends. And his son was getting married, Jack Carson, who works for Jägermeister.
I know Jack real well, yeah.
So his son was getting married up in Palm Springs. And I was up there, and we're at a table, myself and my fiance at the time, Rick Sales, and a couple other people decent. And we're all at different tables, you know, like, you know, typical wedding. It wasn't anything, it was a wedding. And so it was Dee Snider and his wife, and Ricky Sales, myself, Ali, a couple other people, but there was a couple of empty seats. And like, guy comes and joins our table. It's Robert Plant. I'm just like sitting next. It was really,
Wow.
It was really, and he was super cool. And we had a wonderful time, and we laughed a lot. He was a big joker, like I like to tell jokes, and we would, and I purposely kind of like didn't ask him. I didn't like. I'm not going to do what everyone else does until the very, 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 very end of the night, and and then he bought it. He said, he was sort. I think he was sort of like, I'm glad you didn't ask,
Oh, he said that?
So it was kind of came about in a weird way, but he had said about he likes singing. He said, I just like to sing. I just don't want to sing what I've sung already. so we have we have our rubber chicken, like good wedding guests we are, and hear the best man do his sing, and everything, and then the doors open and it's like a cover band playing "I Will Survive" and "Hava Nagila," and all the shit that any wedding you've ever been to ever in your whole life. So Ricky and I are at the bar. No shock there, and all of a sudden we sort of realize that Robert is on stage singing with this local cover band from Palm Springs, and he got up. And so we kind of shuffled down to the front, and he didn't sing any Zeppelin songs. He was singing blues shit, and it was great.
That's
don't
cool.
Get me wrong, just singing blues stuff. And I see Dee Snider standing on the other side of the wings of the stage. So after Robert sings, and the band, these kids from Palm,
They're freaking out.
they were like,
Mind blown.
Still talking about it to this day.
Yeah. And then he gets off, and Dee comes on, and he says, and he literally says, if you won't sing it, I'll sing it. And he does a version of Rock and Roll with the band.
Wow.
And it was before all these fucking things, where you could take pictures of everything. And I was like, oh my God. I can remember looking across the stage, Robert with his arms folded, with a real bemused look on his face, watching Dee Snider sing Rock and Roll at a wedding in Palm Springs. That's a very special memory. It's a very special memory.
That's awesome. An incredible memory.
Yeah, that's
Jack Carson had the great, I'm going to text him as soon as we're out of here and say, I heard you had the most incredible wedding ever.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. He's a really good guy. Jack's a great guy. And Phil's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, that's the cool thing, because what the entertainment, what we do is we're all friends, and that's the cool thing is we can all just sit here, have a drink, talk, share stories. I still remember my first interaction with you when I was at Interscope Records, and we did the Guns N' Roses Chinese Democracy event at the Roxy, and everyone says, oh, you got to meet Andy for the first time. It's my first time working with you, and I see this guy just loving life in the Roxy, headbanging.
Yeah.
Listen to Chinese Democracy, and there was like, oh, that's Andy. I was like, I was hoping that was Andy.
Yeah.
And I remember you took me over the Rainbow, because you're like, we're going to go to the Rainbow. And it was like my second time ever at the Rainbow. And I went with Andy Gould, and I think we had 4 special friends with us. They were beautiful. They were beautiful blondes. And then we had, I think Axel's team was with us too, the Brazilians. And you ordered escargot. And I'm sitting at the Rainbow, and I've never had escargot.
They have escargot at the Rainbow.
Apparently, it's.
But they're good there. It's
Yeah,
good
see?
there.
Yeah.
That's what he said. It's probably one of the best escargot. And Andy being from Europe and traveling a bit, I trusted him, and I had my first escargot.
And it's good, right? Basically garlic.
Yeah,
That's
it's
all
just,
it is.
but that was my first time having escargot. Was at the Rainbow with Andy Gould.
Look, you know what? It's easy, especially when, as I said earlier, I was working with Rob for a long, long time, and then that stopped happening. And it's easy to get kind of, when bad things happen, or, the thing that happened with Chester this year, obviously I was very connected. Or
Chris too, yeah.
Very connected with Linkin Park, with, because Rob, who I think you interviewed already, right? Did you interview Rob the other
McDermott?
day? Yeah.
Not yet. I'm going to.
Oh,
Rob McDermott will be on the show
I know
too,
you saw him, right?
Yeah.
So Rob McDermott, who worked for me, who bought me Linkin Park, and most people had passed on them, and he, and we hadn't worked with him for a long time, but when Chester died, there's things that happen as you get older that can just turn you off to what you do, but for the most part, every day I still get up and go, I can't believe I get to do this.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me sometimes, especially where I come from. I come from very humble, as I said before, sort of blue collar beginnings, and I'm here in Beverly Hills, and someone's interviewing me. about my career. That's ridiculous. You couldn't. If someone had said to me like 40 years ago, "Oh, in 5 years from now, you're going to be in Beverly Hills, and someone's going to be calling you like a rock and roll legend," I'd be like, "Fuck off." That's not going to happen.
So you're already a rock and roll legend.
Be a fucking bum, and I'm not a rock and roll legend. I don't like that word, but
in some people's eyes you are.
some people say,
and
not me.
But the cool thing about you is you're not just rock and roll. You've done so many other things. You're heavily in the film and film world.
I enjoy that.
How was that transition going from music into film? Did you
Really?
know anything about it? Or you just jump right in and say, "This is what we're going to do"?
Really, Rob actually, got to give him his credit. He always wanted to make movies. He said it right from the start, and I was like, "Well, let's do it." And I was like, "Let's just go and let's figure out how to do it." We, went in, and the world of rock and roll people being responsible is not it's not a well paved road. Most rock and roll guys are not that responsible. So when I said, could you give me like $5 million to make a movie? Universal were like, no, fucking no, and leave. And then come back and then leave again.
There's a thing about you getting kicked out of Universal.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. I mean, they were like, because nobody had done it before.
Yeah.
No rock and roll. Loads of rock and rollers had been in movies, but no rock and roller had written and directed a film.
Now he'd done a couple music videos before.
He'd done all of his
correct?
videos. Remember I said he
every
wanted
single
to do.
one.
He did all of his videos. Won a bunch of MTV awards and other awards. And so it was an easier thing to go do it. And then when you meet Rob and you see that he's super straight, super responsible, has a real vision of what he wanted to do. But we made House of a Thousand Corpses.
That was the first one?
For Universal. When they screened it, they hated it. They literally threw us out. I mean, they were like, "We can't put this out. This is like
And they ended up financing it though, even though.
No, they did. They we made it, and we shot it on the back lot. We shot it at it used to. If you're on that tram ride, it's the house called the Best Little Whorehouse.
Yeah.
An old movie, which I think they now call the Corpses House, which I take as a major victory. But they did not enjoy the movie. They wanted it out. They wanted to shelve it. And at that moment, there was still a big connection between the film company and the record label. And I was like, "I'll never make another record for Universal Geffen if you don't let me buy my movie back." And so we bought it back, and we were going to sell it to MGM, and then MGM got cold feet, and it looked like it was literally going nowhere. And then we played it to Lionsgate. And Lionsgate, I bought it. We bought it for very little money back from Universal and sold it for a bunch of money to Lionsgate. And then it was like, it came in at number 12 on the movie chart. And nobody saw that coming.
Now it's a cult. Would be a horror classic now, some would say,
House
right?
of a Thousand Corpses, yeah. Any minute someone's going to remake it.
Horror flicks have such a great audience. Yeah, they're such a great audience.
And then we made, right afterwards, we made Devil's Rejects, which I believe is the best movie we ever made together.
That's your favorite. Did you film that on the lot too, or did you go?
No, that one we
location?
were up in the desert, up in.
Eddie's scared of horror movies, so just
okay.
I tried to get him to watch it last night, so he was ready, and he's like, "I got to get a good night's sleep."
You're an actor, right?
I am, man.
Have you made a horror movie?
I have not. No.
The minute here's what will stop you ever being scared of horror movies, is when you make one, because when you realize what they are. It's dead, I don't want to, take the curtain away too much, but when you make a horror movie, you realize, what it is. So then when you watch them because I don't really like them either, I'm not dating right now, ladies. I won't watch him alone. I don't like it because all of a sudden, the tap dripping or
big imagination
leaves brushing against my window.
Is my house settling, or is someone in my house right now with a butcher
exactly.
knife?
Well, that's the Hostel movie got me. That was the one. I was like, I'm never traveling to Europe. I'm never going to Eastern Europe. Never going to Hostel. just freaked me out. Cause
I guess if you're on set with the bad guy and he's hanging out and you're cracking jokes and maybe he's smoking a cigarette, drinking coffee through a mask, it might change your opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. It's much harder than, But that was sort of fun to do. I still like doing that. I've got a movie right now called Scared to Death, where Paul Boyd, his wonderful video director, did everything from Shania Twain and all sorts of... I met him doing this country act that I got my first country artist.
Who is it?
Carolyn Jones.
Okay.
And she's just been opening for Zac Brown.
Yeah, that's my stuff. I love country music, so that's my jam.
Zac Brown is crazy. I don't think people realize how big this guy is. He's so good and he's so nice, and the way he operates his business is like first class. And this guy's doing 2 nights at Citi Field in New York, 2 nights. He did played in Denver with him to like 37,000 people. I mean, this guy's probably one of the biggest acts on the planet right now, and he really is. It's funny, he does a ton of covers. If you ever see him, he plays Paradise City. He does Bohemian.
Well, he's a rocker. He loves rock
like
music.
A rocker
yeah.
guy,
He's great at an outdoor venue. I saw him in Hollywood Bowl last time. It was awesome.
Caroline played with him.
Andy's artist opened up.
Okay.
She was the opening act. He brings her on stage and she sings with him.
I might have had a few Coors Lights, but yes, it was a great concert though. It was awesome.
And so we did that. And then now we're out with Jimmy Buffett. We're playing with Jimmy Buffett, and some of the shows is Jimmy Buffett and the Eagles, but she plays with Jimmy.
Wow.
Jimmy Buffett.
And that's really fun. And then
Legendary.
she's going to do some dates with Tim McGraw, Faith Hill. A lot of people are really turning onto her, and she's super talented. Again, very driven. Definitely knows what she wants. Plays all the instruments, writes all the songs. It's got I love that. I love anyone who's got like a POV, point of view. I love that, and it's kind of fun to do something like completely different, like country. And
is that your first entrance into that world, country music world?
Yeah, I've always sort of I don't like all of it,
right?
But I really like the old, Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings. I love the Chris Christopherson's one of my absolute heroes.
The Highwaymen, yeah.
Yeah, I love that stuff, and I love what's his name?
Stapleton.
Chris Stapleton is.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
I like the Brothers Osborne too.
Yeah,
those guys
really
are great.
Cool. But it's really funny. For anyone who's listening, talking to the agent for Chris Stapleton. So this was like last year. So she said. So now it would be 3 years ago. She was like 3 years ago. I was begging people for $500 for Chris Stapleton. I couldn't get. No one wanted to book him. It was like the guy always made money because he was a big songwriter for other people, but nobody was interested. And people would always tell him, just write songs, And he knew that he wanted to be. And when you see him live, he's so damn good. You're like, how did people not want to book him? But that's,
I love those stories.
Did they strategically put him with? Because the first time I ever saw him was with Justin Timberlake, and they both played each other's songs. I think it was at the CMAs.
Well, there's no doubt that broke him. There's no doubt
that was huge.
Broke him to everyone.
Mainstream,
but he was already really popular in the world.
Yeah, he was with the Steel Drivers.
It's a very strange thing, country, because it's so big. It's probably the biggest sort of pop urban thing. It's way bigger than rock right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is rock. A lot of it is rock. You go see bands like Florida Georgia Line, Little Big Town, particularly Florida Georgia Line. That's a rock band. They just wear hats.
They even border on pop. They're sometimes they even border that New Kids on the Block vibe too.
Now, but
What's that country artist you introduced me to? The guy is very vulgar.
I forget. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? I forgot the name. I was hoping
old school like David Allan Coe. Or
no, David Allan Coe.
Wheeler Walker Jr.
Yeah.
Oh, he's great. Yeah.
Andy introduced me to him. All of a sudden, Andy's my next door neighbor in our old office, and he's like, "You gotta listen to this."
It's crazy shit.
And this guy is the most vulgar country guy I've ever heard, and it's so funny. But I loved it. But Andy introduced me to that.
No, we have. I mean, the funny thing is talking to people that are in the rock business and in the country businesses, when you go backstage or you go to like backstage at a country music festival, people are genuinely having a good time, and they kind of help each other. And often, you know, with the rock music again, you know, it's so weird. We're so dumb that, you know, if you went, you know, most of the pop urban acts, it's like so and so featuring and her. You know, it's always like, you know, rap. It's always, you know, somebody featuring someone and someone and someone.
It's collaborative.
And country is the same thing. But if you go to any rock act and go, well, are you going to make a new record? Why don't you put in this guy and that guy and that? They'll be like,
No.
they don't do it. And it's the only music that's going down instead of up. Everyone else, they're so into the collaboration.
They lift each other up for sure
lift
out
each
there.
other
Lita
up.
Ford and Ozzy did "Close My Eyes Forever," or was it "Close My Eyes Forever"?
But that was
a
it was
beautiful
in the
duet.
80s.
But they need to do that. Like you said, they need to start doing that more. And
Team up, you know.
just have some fun. Make some killer
even
art.
Even if it's done on a purely marketing level, that if you take, you know, 3 people, if you have your own fans and then you bring 2 other big, at least you're going to get some of their fans
Well,
going to go buy it.
Andy, why do the labels block that? Because I've noticed, because I used to manage rock bands, and I'd have a singer on a different label, trying to put her on this label for this song, and the labels and publishers get involved. But why don't you have that issue with hip hop and the other genres?
Hip hop do what they want to do.
Yeah.
People tend, the labels don't get in the way. You know, rock, they had more control over, and you know, labels are stupid. That's why they're mostly out of business. So, or they can be stupid.
Fair enough.
You know.
So is that Scared to Death coming out soon, or is it already out right now?
No. We're just getting the funding for
Pre-production,
it right
okay.
now. So, but it's a great script, and he's a really good director, and that'll be the next thing we do on that level.
Were you with? Were you just helping with Chinese Democracy, or were you there beforehand? What's your background with GNR?
I got involved. That's a long story. Perhaps another session.
No problem.
But I kind of did get Chinese Democracy out. It was a very tough time because Axl was in a pretty weird space at the time. He had spent a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of his sweat on Chinese Democracy, and I think everyone wanted it out, maybe with the exception of him. I think he had got the better of him. You know, we famously fell out about it because I kind of put the record out. I think he never really, you know, we did a lot, and I've always felt a little bad about it. I think Axe was one of the major talents, of the business, and I just wanted to see if I could get that monkey off his back. You know, like, let's get this out, because already I knew that it wasn't going to be as big a hit as he wanted it to be, because so much of it had already leaked onto the internet. So, like, I remember we went down and played, before that thing at the Roxy, we'd gone down and played the record in front of a bunch of Best Buy people, because we did that deal with Best Buy. And I was standing on stage playing this to people, and I realized everyone was singing all the words. There's a record they hadn't heard yet.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, this could be something. And I remember going back to partners with Irving in those days, going, everyone knows this record. Everyone knows it because it was already leaked. Those tracks were out all over the place. And the classic thing about Chinese Democracy is the songs that didn't make the record. There's songs that I heard that didn't make the record that Axl and the family were kind enough, you know, to let me hear some form or another. There's stuff in the vaults that can blow people's minds. I think, you know.
Think they're going to wait to release it, or they just didn't? They weren't sure.
I think it was such a part of his life there with Axl, where he was, you know, he was really kind of trying to re-examine of himself, who he was, what was going on with his life. And I'm glad I put the record out. I wish I didn't put the record out under such bad circumstances. You know, I'm proud of that record. The record's actually, I think now I actually saw something online about rediscovering Chinese Democracy, because there is some good songs on it. I don't know if there's maybe there's 5 great tracks, and he plays a bunch of them live.
He does.
Still. And now he's playing them with the real band, with the old band. And I'm glad that I think if we didn't do what we did, he may still be sitting on it. And the fact that we got it out and it did what it did made him then go out and promote it more. And now he's back with the band, and I hope he's got some relief from it. I haven't spoken to him since.
Well, there's only two guys that had that pressure for that record, and one's Axl Rose, Chinese Democracy, the other's Dr. Dre and Detox.
Yeah.
Which it's funny that those are the only two guys that people were wondering when these masterpieces, and I can imagine why Dre or Axl wouldn't want the record out.
Because
how do you live up to those expectations?
Highly
once it goes
anticipated.
past a certain amount of years, it's like it can never be as good as
everyone wants it to be.
It's like when you wait around for the next James Bond movie or the next Marvel movie, and often they're disappointing.
Yeah.
For as many Black Panthers as there are, there's like Avengers movies that are like.
I think it was like that for me in Star Wars. When Star Wars finally came back, and I'm a kid. I'm still a kid. I should have enjoyed it, and I hated it.
Yeah.
I hated the Jar Jar Binks. I hated the new CGI and all this stuff. It didn't take me back to the OG, the original. And now the new stuff with J.J. Abrams is awesome.
Yeah,
it's incredible. So.
How are you doing on time, Andy? I know we had you for an hour. We're at about an hour and a half right now. If you're still good.
I do have to get out of here because I've got some calls.
Okay. Hey,
I'm happy to do part 2 at some point.
Absolutely. Quincy Jones moment. Quincy Jones moment. Who do you want to out right now?
Totally yeah, that's right.
Totally kidding. Hey, appreciate your time. That was awesome.
I have to say that I'm working with Scott Stapp right now from Creed. And can't tell you, the record he's making is like, he's back. He's singing better than he ever sang.
Really?
Whether you're a Creed fan or you're not.
No, yeah, we used to listen to him all the time.
And this stuff is good, or it's better, I think, than anything he's done. It goes back to his roots as a singer. He's singing, my God, he's singing as good as I've ever heard him sing. And we're making a great record. He's writing with a lot of good people, and we're going to try to make a record, for the ages. We're not going to try to go backwards. We're going to try to move forward with it. And then, obviously my label, I'm still, signing bands to the T-Boy record label. So, there are some, and Caroline Jones, my country act.
Caroline Jones Country, and then What Are You Scared Of? Is that the movie?
Scared to Death.
Scared to Death.
But he's getting that moving.
That's getting going too.
But we'll post, check our Instagram, check our social media. We'll make sure we highlight, and you'll see a lot of the stuff Andy's involved with, all his artists, movies, a lot of stuff we've talked about during this podcast. We'll highlight there so everyone has a direct to get to know more about Andy Gould. And Andy will have part 2 hopefully soon. Thanks for having a drink with us.
We didn't cover.
Yeah.
There's a ton.
Yeah. But thanks for having a drink with us.
Where can people follow you? Do you have a social media account?
Oh God, I do, but I'm not real good with it. I'm not like. I think I'm becoming more and more like other friends of mine, which is digitally invisible. But I probably should do more. I do have an Instagram account. I do, I have a Twitter account, but I'm really bad with it. I'm like. It's just
more about putting eyeballs on the things you're involved in.
But that I'll do. I'm going to do it more. So
we'll put links to your artists then on the podcast.
I should do more.
Yeah. Send us over whatever you have.
Because I did call out during it that make sure you check. So we'll put these things up there.
Yeah, Andy, thank you so much for your time. That was great.
No, I hope it was
loved
good.